Our beer journey continues. Our journey through beer space, buddy, continues, and we discover amazing, amazing new beers to try together. It's a wonderful arena for speaking of these beers and comparing them and describing them to each other and experiencing them for the first time. I'm assuming these beers that you're having today, you're having for the first time like I am. So excited, man. I've got maybe two of the most historic beers. Well, no, that's exaggerating. I'm exaggerating here. But two very historic beers gracing the Beer Brackets pub here today. And so welcome back, everybody, to the Beer Explorers. Open and close our beer brackets together and surprise each other. Neither of us know what beers we are starting with or closing our beer brackets with. So a complete shock, but we just get to present these wonderful beers that we found on our beer explorations. And man, you didn't want to tell me too much, right? Because you didn't want to spoil the beers.
Correct.
And that gives me the feeling that you have something special over there.
Well, I always try to find little surprises here. And like I told you, I found two interesting beers here. So I'm really excited to talk about them and also explore them in a sense. And you understand what I mean here in a moment.
Of course, I'm always a gentleman. I let you open first, but I'll give you a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a teaser, a little bit of an amuse-bouche. This is a beer from a country that we have never tried a beer from on the channel before. It's a brand new beer country, my friend. So a little hint, just to give you a little bit of a tease. But what are you opening your beer brackets with today?
It's coming from a country that we have definitely had beers from before.
Okay.
But it's a category
so it's not that new.
that we both are very intrigued with. And this beer is...
What is it?
The Tynt Meadow from the only...
Tynt Meadow?
Yeah, from the Tynt Meadow. Yeah, no, not really. The Tynt Meadow. It's the...
Like Pitsit?
It's like... maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. Tynt.
Oh, Tynt. Oh,
yeah, Tynt.
Okay.
So
it's like a Tynt Meadow.
Yeah, no, not Tynt Meadow. And you understand why it's not. It could be.
I can see why. The pronunciation. Yeah.
This, my friend, is the only English Trappist brewery in existence.
What?
It was the brewery is actually.
I didn't know there was one in England.
There is
That's
one.
Crazy.
There is one. It's one of the 13. The 13 left. Now that we know that the American one has left the ranks in 2022, as we know. Strong ale brewed by the monks of Mount St. Bernard Abbey in Charnwood Forest. Here we have it, my friend. This is the only English Trappist beer that exists.
That is so cool. I love that bottle too.
Right?
I love like that stubby looking bottle with the short neck.
And then it has like the little green cap here, and you can see it has a kind of a unique cut here on to the label itself.
It's made to look like an old beer scroll.
Yeah, exactly, like a beer scroll. And then there's like the cap here.
It's wrapped in a beer scroll.
That's what it is.
Is that going to be like one of those magic endless labels that just keeps going with information like we encountered that time, where every time you look at it, there's more details about the beer?
That's exactly what it is, my friend. That's why I'm keeping it short here, because I don't want to overwhelm it. I know there's a bunch of scroll writings here on the back. How about you, my friend? What's this country? Now you got me curious.
I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to pull an audible, and I'm going to switch up. I was originally going to open my beer brackets with the one I was telling you about from a brand new beer country, but I'm going to switch it up, and I'm going to open with my originally closing beer bracket to match yours, because I have something that's a little bit similar, my friend. A little bit, not completely similar, but a little bit similar, and allow me to show you when I'm opening my beer brackets with today. We had a series of episodes, 2 episodes, where we reviewed beers from the Huyghe Brewery, right? Who did the Delirium series, who did the Nocturnum, and who did the... What's the name of the other one? Oh my God, I'm blank.
The Tremens.
Yes, the Tremens. Jeez. Delirium Tremens. There we go. I have procured, my friend, on my beer travels, or my beer hunting around the city here, I've procured another beer from the Huyghe Brewery that is not part of the Delirium series. It's a completely different beer that they offer, but it is by the Huyghe Brewery. And I'll show you. It is called the Averbode.
Ooh.
Look at this. I'll show you off on the side here.
Wow.
Look at the classy branding on this beer, man. This is like... It's like silver and white.
I love it.
It's got this little like bluish gray checker pattern on it. And it's a very, very classy looking beer. This is a collaboration with the Huyghe Brewery and as well the Averbode Abbey, who did used to brew Abbey beers, but then stopped brewing their Abbey beers, and now Huyghe brews the beers for them. But we'll get into this in a second. I think we need to open our beers and get right to this.
Let's do it, my friend. Then I have a little reason why I'm opening with the San Bernardus beer cap opener. I'll tell you.
Such a great Christmas episode that was. Oh, look at this. Whoa. It's interesting, these Belgian Abbey ales. They're really just listed as being an Abbey ale, and it says it's a strong Belgian beer. Aside from that, they do mention that it's dry hopped, so it has been lagered. Wow. Okay, what is that one? Look how dark that is.
Right?
Wow.
Look at that.
Is that a double?
It's classified as a strong ale. That's all
Just
it says.
a strong ale?
Yep. Cheers. Cheers, my friend.
Let's take
Cheers.
some sips and let's get right into the stories of these beers. Wow.
That's very nice.
Yeah? I'm watching your reaction here.
That's very nice.
Tell me all about it.
Everlasting and evolving. Well, first I got to mention, and again, like here from the endless source, a scroll of information.
Yeah.
This strong dark ale re-ferments in the bottle.
Okay.
So it's bottle fermented.
Nice.
And then another thing it says here, with this beer, we have returned to 19th century tradition of brewing in our abbeys. So they stopped for a while. When our brethren arrived in 1835, they settled in a poor cottage on Tynt Meadow, now an extension of our monastic enclosure. One thing
Try
I
not
wanted
to make tit jokes.
Yeah, right? One thing that I wanted to mention is, like I said earlier, is the Saint Bernard Abbey is where the beer is brewed. And it obtained the Trappist authentic logo in 2018. So it's relatively recent.
Nice.
So when they had to apply for the beer, normally traditionally they use the name of the abbey, right? Saint Bernard reminds of another one, Saint Bernardus, that was already kind of like, it's not a Trappist beer, but it's kind of already on the market.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why they picked Tynt Meadow, which is exactly the spot like described there in the label where they lend it. And that's why I decided, like, well, let's open with a Saint Bernardus.
First, I got to tell you the history of this man, because this is super interesting. According to the beer scrolls, my friend, going back to the 12th century, the 1100s, back to the beginnings of this abbey, there was evidence of them making beer. Not strong evidence, not enough to say this was the oldest brew, but there was some evidence, maybe some beer whispers. Some ancient beer whispers in the distance. This might be shocking to you to hear, right? But over the centuries, the abbey was plagued by lots of looting, lots of fires.
It was destroyed multiple times.
It was. It was destroyed multiple times.
That never happens.
It had been destroyed multiple times over the years in many, many epic beer battles, and it was rebuilt. You know, like all these raids and all these beer battles that have been waged over the years, I'm not surprised that all these monasteries have been toppled and destroyed over time, because if the monks are drinking this liquid bread continuously, how would they defend themselves? If you take time to read into beer history, this narrative is the
It's
same.
constant. It's almost like monastery and beer like equals like destruction.
That never happens, right?
If monks are brewing beer, and absolutely never happens.
Destroyed multiple times over the centuries by fires and plagued by plagues. First of all, so just lots of fire and death and just horrible things plaguing this this monastery.
Can I just say kudos to those monks, man? Like, they know the history. They know that bad things are going to happen to them, and they brew anyway. They don't care.
They don't care. They're just like, we're going to keep brewing. We're going to keep brewing. They don't give a crap. Oh, my God. So in the late 18th century, the monastery was finally destroyed for good. Of course, they stopped brewing beer at that point.
It happens.
A new monastery was built on the grounds. And in 2013, of course, because these monasteries are always looking for ways to generate income, right? So a lot of them will make cheese, make different kinds of foods. They'll do all these different sort of like community initiatives to fundraise, to support the abbey and their going-ons in the abbey and their drinking and their slumbering and all that, right? And so one of the things they did was they're like, you know what? And maybe this is because of all the fires and the looting. They're like, we're not going to brew the beer ourselves anymore. So we're going to partner with an existing established brewery in Belgium, and we're going to have them brew the beer for us. And that's when they partnered with Huyghe, famous for their Delirium beers. And they took what was left, at least, of an original recipe. I don't know what that was written on or how that was stored. And they tried to brew a beer that honored the history of the Averbode Brewery. So it's brewed in conjunction, but it's not actually brewed on the grounds of the Abbey. It's just sort of keeping with the traditions of this particular Abbey. And as I mentioned, it is dry hopped. You may not familiar. It's when the dry hopping is when you add additional hops during the cold lagering process, right? To give it a bit more of like a sharp, bitter, hoppy taste. And then you're left with this delicious beer, 7.1% ABV, strong blonde Belgian ale.
Cheers.
Oh, okay. That was fun. Always nice to have a laugh about these poor Abbeys.
Well, but in a way, it's very sad. But the interesting thing is that every time it seems like we dig into beer history, it's almost always the same situation that happens over time without failing. Like especially when monks are involved, like for whatever reason, like when monks are involved, like there's
when
always
the monks are involved. Exactly. All right, man, tell me all about that one. Come on, I'm dying to hear.
I am very excited to tell you, my friend. Like, so as first thing you can see now, it's been open for a little bit. I've taken a few sips. There's not a lot of carbonation, so the carbonation dies like pretty quickly. The main focus of this beer, to how I'm perceiving it, it has this very intense aromatic that leans towards like a quad without getting in that direction. It's a little bit lighter, potentially lighter than a double, but
wow. Okay.
the notes that I'm getting are more leaning towards the quad. So you have these dark fruits, figs, like you have like prunes.
Ooh, love those figs, those beer figs.
You undernotes of chocolate.
Yeah.
But then a nice thing that happens is that the moment you take a sip, that initial like strong presence on the nose like translate into a more light body with very nice malt notes that are not heavy but more on the caramelized side of things. And you do get like this nice carbonation that cleanses your palate. And I find these notes of almost like licorice, like lingering in the background, with a very nice
like black licorice or red licorice.
Black licorice.
Oh.
So
like
you get this exactly just like a sambuca. The finish is the most interesting part of this beer because it's very long and everlasting. Like it's just like all those flavors like are intertwined and continue to go on and on. Definitely like an amazing experience, my friend. It's something that quite unique. Tell me about yours, man. Like, how does your taste?
This one is fantastic. At first, when I first took a sip, I was like, okay, I was expecting a little bit more character-wise, but I think it's just because I saw the 7.1% ABV and I was expecting something strong. But the more I drink it, and maybe it has to do with letting it breathe a little bit too, but the more that it sits out, the more character is coming out of the beer. And I'm really, really enjoying this. For something that's 7.1%, this is dangerously drinkable. It drinks like a triple. So you can see, I mean, it's been a couple of minutes since we poured it out. I still have like a decent amount of head on it here. And it still has a very sharp bite of a carbonation to it when you take a sip. So it really does remind me of a lot of triples that I've had in my life. So that can maybe allow you to place it a little bit. It's got that kind of body and carbonation to it. Aside from that, it's very light. The aroma is almost non-existent, which was something that shocked me a little bit at first. You get a little bit of malt and hops and maybe a little bit of citrus on the aroma, but it's tiny. It's very, very faint. There isn't much of an aroma to the beer, but when you take a sip, there's all this faint, very subtle character that comes through, and you get like orange peel, maybe even like lime. There's some very nice citrus in there. Faint hint of maltiness, and of course that citrusy coming from the hops. It's very hoppy, and again that dry hop process that we talk about, it gives it this really nice, sharp, bitter bite to it, but still very drinkable. But you still get like a nice sort of almost like a sweeter version of citrus, like a candied orange on the finish a little bit that really finishes off the beer really nicely and makes you just want to go back in for another sip. But the whole thing is super crisp, really refreshing, and almost like for a 7.1% beer that drinks like a triple, like it cleanses your palate a little bit. Like once the finish is gone, I'm just like, I forgot what it tasted like. I want to go back in and take another sip because everything was just so, it's just like mist. It's like beer mist, man. It's there a minute later and then it's gone. It's completely gone. Really well done, masterfully done beer. No surprise. I mean, this brewery has a beer on our Perfect Beer Roundtable, so no surprise that the quality level is there at all. But wow, this is fantastic.
I'm glad to hear that, my friend. It sounds like quite the find that you have there. I like the way you describe the finish, like very like beer mist. It paints a picture, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for holding on to that. I can imagine how hard it was to keep that in your beer cellar and not touch it and not partake in that delicious brew. I can totally
always
understand.
A pleasure, my friend. Always a pleasure, and it's that's part of the experiencing. You know, being here together and getting to experience it together, and getting the first time reactions. Those are important.
Exactly. Do not worry, everybody at home. These beers will be drank. We're going to put them aside just for now, but these beers will be treated with utmost respect, and they'll be given a good home. They will be drank. Don't worry.
For sure.
But we need to find out, just so these episodes aren't 45 minutes long, we need to find out what are we closing our beer brackets with. I'm excited for this one, man. I cannot wait.
Do you want to start, since like you're always such a gentleman and a scholar, to let me start all of the episodes? I think like I can sense the excitement here. Like I almost feel like it's right for you to close the beer brackets first, if you're okay with that, my friend.
If you insist.
I do. Let's change it up for once.
All right. This beer, as I mentioned, is from a country that we have never featured a beer from before. It's from a country that I didn't even know made beer. I mean, I assumed that they did, but I'd never seen one on the shelves from them before. I'll venture to say, for this reason, because of where it's from and the lack of other beer from this region, probably one of the most historically significant beers that we've featured on the channel, which says a lot. A beer from Athens, Greece, called the Fix Helles Lager.
Ooh, wow.
And there is look at this little stubby bottle. Look at this. Isn't this great?
Look at that, my friend.
Look at this. Look at this. And there is a story. There is a beer legend to this beer that I cannot wait to tell you about. It's not just a good-looking beer bottle. There is a story behind this beer that will blow your mind. But first, I need to find out, what are you closing your beer brackets with today?
I'm excited, my friend, to hear that beer legend. You know I always love beer legends. That's so. I'm gonna go be quick here. Like I foretold you before we started the episode. I'm closing with a beer that is part of a style that, for what I can remember, we have never featured on the channel before. And this beer is, butcher this name badly. So
what is it?
From the Averbode Brewery, the Zittauer Bürgerbräu. Their Schwarzbier.
Oh.
I have never had this beer before. I have had the Schwarzbier style, many times. Huge fan of Schwarzbier, which in German just means like black beer.
Black lager, yeah.
Yes, black lager specifically.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm a big fan of it is because of the flavor profile that it has and how it's made using roasted malt, but being a lager fermentation, we all know it's cold fermented. So it's, if you want the lager equivalent to the stout, in a sense, because it uses or Irish stout at least, like it uses roasted malt.
Yeah.
So it has a lot of those similar characteristics in general. I've never had this one here in particular. The town of Averbode, it's pretty much at the very tip in between the Czech Republic, Poland, and Germany. Okay. It's located right there, and the forest there's a national park, the Zittauer.
Is it in the forest?
It's nearby, and this beer is brewed using the water from that forest and national park.
Oh my God, that's amazing! So it is a forest beer then.
It is a forest beer, my friend. That's exactly what it is. It's a forest beer.
It's been a while since we've dealt with a forest beer.
Right?
I must say, going back to probably one of my favorite episodes that we've ever done, Beer Brackets of the Month, episode 11. Heavy on the forest beers in that episode. Fantastic episode. I definitely recommend, if you're digging this style of episode, go back and watch Beer Brackets of the Month. Watch all the Beer Brackets of the Month. Beer Explorers is kind of like the spiritual successor to Beer Brackets of the Month. Go back and check that out, especially number 11. That is 4 fantastic beers were drank on that day. But I got to tell you about the Fix Helles Lager here, okay?
Oh, I'm ready.
I need you to get ready. I need you to relax. I need you to get in the right frame of mind to absorb some beer history, because we're all going to learn something here today. A side of beer history that we've never touched on the channel before. This is the first ever beer brewed in Greece. Now that might sound like that's impressive, right? But there haven't been many beers brewed in Greece, surprisingly. And there's a good reason why there haven't been many beers brewed in Greece. So this was founded in 1864. You would have thought, like, with the history that Greece had, right? There would have been some beer brewing going on, but beer was not a part of Greek culture for a majority of its history at this point. If you're talking 1864 is when this brewery was founded. And it was founded by a man named Johann Karl Fix, and that's where the name Fix Helles Lager comes from, in Athens. Mr. Fix was a purveyor to the court. So what this meant was he supplied beer to the king. There was a whole influx of Bavarian immigrants into Greece at the time, and they were working in the mines and so on and so forth. So his father came over from Bavaria and was working in a mine in Athens. And so as Johann was coming down, he was coming to visit his father. He got on an old rickety boat and he sailed from Germany all the way to Greece. And he arrives in Athens to see his father, who maybe he hasn't seen in years. I don't know. We have no idea how long it's been since he's seen him. His father, on the way to meet him at the port, gets murdered by thieves. Okay, so he never gets to see his father. And so he's just distraught. And he finds himself in Athens, and he doesn't know what to do with himself, of course, but he winds up staying in Athens just because I'm assuming he was just paralyzed with fear, my friend. So what happened was, to soothe himself, I'm assuming it has to be, he started importing barrels of beer from Bavaria. He started importing Helles lagers from Bavaria. And he became almost like a beer dealer in Athens. So at the time in Athens, the only beer that was common and the beer that the king loved were British porters. The beer that was coming out of England at the time, we've touched on this a little bit on why are stouts so popular in Ireland. We touch on this legend a little bit. But porters were very popular. So when he started importing these barrels of beer from Bavaria, the king took notice. And this is how he became what they call a purveyor to the king, supplying him with this delicious Helles lager from Bavaria that the king had never, ever tried before. See, isn't that unbelievable? So then what he did eventually, he became known, obviously, as the beer man in Greece. And he opened the first official brewery to exist in Greece at the time, in that period in the 19th century. And there you go. And he's been that family has been brewing ever since. That's my long-winded beer legend and beer history.
That's a fantastic beer legend, my friend. He became known as the beer man. What a wonderful title. and being, even the king, telling you, you're my beer man. What better?
The purveyor to the
title
king was what he was labeled as. And he would just brew beer for the people, but he would personally deliver beer to the king, and the king was addicted to his Helles lager.
The best possible achievable title for a brewer. I'm excited to hear your impressions on this beer.
I am excited, buddy. Let's crack these open. I can't wait. I've been holding on to this one. I saw it at the SAQs here. This new neighborhood that I'm living at in Montreal. Anybody who's been following this channel has heard me rant about the LCBOs in Ontario for a long time, and the Quebec version of that is the SAQ, which isn't so known for its beer, mostly just wine and liquor. It's the only place in Quebec you can go to buy liquor. And they have very small beer collections, but the one that's a block away from me here, they have a tiny, tiny little shelf in the corner where they have all the hard seltzers and stuff, and they have a little bit of beer, and this is 50% of the beer that they carry for some reason.
Let's give it a shot, right?
Let's give it a shot. It'd be a shame if it's bad. Oh, dude. Oh my God. Okay. You start, but I cannot wait to tell you about this.
The aroma is very promising. Very nice roasted notes, classic German beer hops, and a nice maltiness. So let's take a sip, my friend, and see where we're going. Cheers. Okay.
This is really good.
Is it, my friend? I can see from your face that
it's
you're
really
enjoying that.
It's a Helles lager, so it's light. There isn't a million different descriptors I could give you to describe it, but if you've had a really good lager before, then when you have one. It's hard to describe a good lager, right? a good lager is really about the experience. It's kind of just the personal experience that you're having with it. Really, it's the ease of drinkability, the taste, the smoothness. There's so much that goes into a good lager that's really hard to put into words. But what caught me first about this was the aroma. Freshly baked bread with a little bit of sweetness, almost like what you get off a bakery, because there's like sweets being baked in a bakery. There's some like cookies being baked mixed with fresh bread. That's kind of what it is, like this mix of just delicious baked goods combining together to form like this potent aroma. I've never smelt an aroma just like this on a lager before. It's so inviting. Once you take a sip, it's very light, very subtle, but you get hints of that really noticeable body to it. It's very carbonated, very sharp carbonation. It's got a nice sort of like almost creamy body to it. It's a little bit oily, but in a good way. It sort of like sticks on your palate. Delicious. And then on the finish, it's like just all bread, like sweet bread.
That sounds really very good, my friend.
Helles lagers, it's simple style, but character. Okay, I'm dying to hear about yours. Tell me all about it.
I loved hearing your description, my friend, especially after the nice legend. Like it's nice that the beer is standing up to it. Very well described, by the way. So this one here, I will say the aroma is very interesting. It draws you into the glass. When you take a sip, you have like a very strong carbonation, very light. But I will say it's very light on the roasted notes.
Is it really?
Which I wasn't expecting, honestly, especially from the aroma being so present. All the black lagers that I've had tend to be more on the roasty side, and it's quite prominent as a note. On this one here, I would say it's more leaning towards the sweetness, the malt sweetness. There's still that roasted note, but it's all the notes are very light. But I find it very enjoyable. It's very drinkable. I've had a few sips, and the finish is very refreshing, so it's extremely sessionable. Probably also has to do with the water they use coming from that like forest park that we talked about. Makes it like very, very nice and enjoyable. A little bit different than the other ones that I tried, so a bit of a surprise, but a very pleasant surprise.
Yeah, that part of how you described the beer really fascinated me when you said like it's made using the water from the forest there, right? That's always that's what I love. That's probably the biggest point of interest of trying beers from different countries and different places, because you know that when you get it, you're drinking something made with water from that location, right? So it has like this character, this soul from the place that you're drinking it at. Especially, that's why forest beers are so fascinating to me, because it's made with like beer straight from the source, straight from Mother Nature. That's just
like traveling. And speaking of traveling, just like I mentioned earlier, this town of Averbode, you could, I don't know if it makes a lot of sense to do it, but you could walk to the Czech Republic or walk to especially the town of Zittauer. Like you can brought from Zittauer over to Poland with no problem. It's just right there at the border. So like if you imagine like the two cross lines, like that's just where it's located. So that's I thought that was very interesting when I was looking it up on the map. Like I thought, oh, look at that. Like you could just be there and say like, oh, I'm going to go have a beer in Poland tonight. Oh, I'm going to go have a beer in Czech Republic tonight.
I want to go have a Polish beer. I'm going to go have a Tajski. It's interesting that you said that was kind of bland, and I do really one day want to get to Sapporo beers on the channel. I think that's a brand that we absolutely need to tackle at some point. And I remember I tried it's not new at this point, it's probably been out for about a year, but they released a Schwarzbier. I think it's a Sapporo Black. And I remember I liked it, but the same kind of thing. I was hoping for a lot more roastiness on the note, and it was actually very sort of like muted. It was very kind of just nothing bad to it. I was looking for so much more character. It just drank really light. I kind of exactly, I was thinking of that when you're describing it. It was, you're going for a black lager, you're going for a Schwarzbier. It's like you want some roastiness, right? You want some character,
right, my friend. And I think for me, I guess like the one that always comes to mind is the Kostritzer. Like that one there has like such a unique character, and it's hard to find. There is actually one place here nearby where I live in. Maybe we might have to visit that like one time that you come. But it's this German restaurant that has all German food. He's here from the U.S. His wife is from Germany. They moved here. They opened this restaurant like some years ago. They've been cooking like all traditional food. But one of the things that I like about that place is that it has like 4 or 5 beers but on tap, but they're all German beers.
Nice.
Last time I was there, which at this point was a few years ago, they had the Kostritzer on tap. So when I saw that, like, because it's one beer that I really like, and I said, like, oh, I gotta have that, and like that experience and that specific note, those roasty notes, like, and the best way to describe it really is like Irish stout, but think about like it with the lightness of a lager. Yes, exactly.
Like a dry stout,
Exactly.
yeah. Well, this is another epic episode of the Beer Explorers, my friend. We touched on so many different locations around the world today. New locations, new beer locations that we've never explored before. Let us know down below, everybody. If you tried any of these beers, what are some good beers that you found recently on your beer explorations? Anything interesting sitting in your cellar you discovered that you want to get to try really soon? Let us know about it down below. Let us know what it is.
Don't
And
forget
whatever
to
you do,
close your beer brackets.
never forget. Click that little notification bell down below, too. If you want to hang out with us in the pub again moving forward, that bell's going to let you know. It's going to tell you Joe and Alessandro in the pub. Check them out. So you got to click that bell.
And
Forget.
don't forget to close your beer brackets.
Cheers, everybody. It's poor monasteries.